Cincinnati Bengals 27, Buffalo Bills 10. Bengals off to the AFC Championship here. I think this was the most surprising game of the weekend, the way it played out. This had to be the most surprising game, how dominant the Bengals were from start to finish. Not that the Bengals won, not even that they won by 3 scores, but the fact that they dominated the game, got up 14-0, and really had the game in control. There was never even really a scare from Buffalo. It got to 17-10, and then Cincinnati just drove right down the field and scored a touchdown. Never really a scare from the Buffalo Bills against the Bengals here today.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm surprised by. Like, not that Cincinnati looked good and that they were rolling. I mean, if you look at their, like, since they started this run, this has been who they've been largely. You know, okay, they got a little bit lucky last week needing that fumble return thing to kind of basically a 14-point swing and come out of that game with a win. But this is generally who they've been. And remember, the last time they were playing Buffalo when the DeMar Hamlin situation happened and that game was abandoned, they looked really good at the start of that game. And if you combine the start of that game with the start of this game, Burrow was like 15 for 15 for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, he hadn't missed, literally.
Complete
for
domination.
3 scores, 3 drives. So the fact that Cincinnati looked good wasn't shocking. What was shocking to me is that Buffalo basically didn't fire a shot all day. And you're thinking, I mean, you even tweeted this, right? You're like, we've seen nothing from the Bills, but this game is only 2 Josh Allen throws away from being flipped on its head. Yeah. And they just never came. They never happened. And Allen has been carrying this team for, a long time. He's felt like he's had to do it all by himself. A lot of occasions, he was like the all-time NFL playoff leader in terms of average yards per playoff game for anyone that's played more than 5 games, like 350 yards or something crazy. And he just didn't have it today. And we said, I think I said it in this podcast, I made it the point a few times during the week that we were all talking about Cincinnati's offensive line, down 3 starters in 3 weeks, whether or not the Bills had the kind of pass rush to cause that problems. Nobody was talking about the other side, which is Buffalo's offensive line is not good, and they have to go up against Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, and the Bengals defense is playing really well. That turned out to be a far bigger mismatch than Cincinnati's backups against Buffalo's defensive front.
It did. So, we got the snow game, right? After I was complaining, right? We got the snow. We got the winter. It would have
been snow here if they'd had it as well.
I know. It was, I had no idea we were going to get this much snow this morning. It was coming down hard earlier today, and then I guess it ended up in Buffalo as well. So we got the fun snow game, and at one point, the Bengals were up 14-0, and the Bills had run 3 plays. And it felt like the Bills' pass rush was non-existent. So it felt like this easy narrative that's like, well, the snow is affecting the pass rush. You don't have footing. You don't have that get off. It's actually an advantage for the offense, the offensive line, right? And I'm thinking this in my head, well, maybe that's what's slowing down the Bills, and that ends up becoming a blessing in disguise for the Bengals' offensive line. And then on the very next drive, 3-man rush, and Trey Hendrickson absolutely whoops Deion Dawkins for a sack to end that drive against. It might not have been a sack. I think Allen may have thrown it away. I can't remember. But either way, incredible pass rush by Trey Hendrickson. It was just one-sided. Right? The Bills did not get any pressure on Joe Burrow, especially early on. And the Bengals did get pressure, and they did a great job. I mean, I just think schematically, the Bengals offensively and defensively were fantastic. It does feel like they hit a groove. Lou Anarumo with his there's points where he hits a groove as a defensive play caller, where it's like, I'm gonna rush 3, and we're still gonna cause havoc. Then I'm gonna blitz Mike Hilton off the slot. And we faked it front side and we got it backside, and Josh Allen's getting popped, right? He hits this groove where every call is there. And then offensively, I thought they did an awesome job scheming it up, running from the gun. Joe Mixon had a ton of room to run, and then he ran hard. And Burrow had time, and they were getting their mismatches, and they were moving Jamar Chase around. Jamar Chase has become more than just this outside vertical threat, right? He's a guy they're going to line up inside, and he's going to work the middle of the field and work the short stuff. The Bengals, in one of their touchdowns was like, hey, a tendency buster. It's 3rd and long. We run the screen to Chase a lot. They fake it. They get the wide open touchdown. I just thought the Bengals called a great game on both sides. I think they deserve a ton of credit there. Joe Burrow starts 9 for 9 as well. And I think there was something to him coming out in the snow, not missing a throw, and the whole team being like, hey, Joe Burrow, he's doing it again, right? And they follow that, and then they just never look back.
Yeah, and the thing is, right at the start, so the Bengals had these 2 flawless drives to start the game, 9 for 9, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns, 154 passer rating. And on both the drives where the Bills are going to try and answer, they found a play on third down, the Bengals defense, to stop it. So the first one, 3rd and 4, Allen's under pressure, just overthrows Stephon Diggs. Like, that's the kind of play that's been there this season. Like that, remember, Miami tried to do that to them last week, right? They blitzed him. They blitzed the house. He got it away. He hit Stephon Diggs over Xavier Howard, and it's a touchdown, right? Like, these are the tiny margins that are the difference in these games. Instead of it being a touchdown and, oh, now we're cooking, we got a shootout on our hands, it was Bills got a punt. And now Cincinnati drives again, and now you're 14 down. Then the next drive, that was your Trey Hendrickson right around Deion Dawkins play on 3rd and 5. Now they got to punt it again. Now they're in a real hole. Thankfully, from their point of view, they managed to hold a little bit better on the next one. They don't go down 21-0, or that would have been, game over pretty much. But it's a couple of high leverage plays in key situations on those first drives, but then Buffalo just never found anything. And what was amazing is the Bengals almost went through this like evolution arc on offense where they start off, they're cooking through the air, and then once they get up, once this becomes clear that they're sort of winning this game and they're controlling the trenches, they almost pivot to this like run heavy attack, and they just start dominating physically. And like Jackson Carman had a great game at left tackle. We were like terrified at how much of a downgrade Jackson Carman is going to be, even from the badly performing Jonah Williams this season. But he was good. I mean, he didn't allow almost anything in pass protection, was a dominant force as a run blocker, and they just started grinding Buffalo's defense down. And, eventually the Bills didn't have any answer at all.
That feels a lot like the thing that we would have missed on the Bengals earlier in the year, was when you looked at last year how volatile they were and the efficiency metrics weren't great and this and that, and it was just, oh yeah, they just, sleepwalk through a game, and then Jamar Chase catches 3 touchdowns and they create a 60-yarder and an 84-yarder and all that stuff with Jamar Chase. They found other ways to win this year, and they found other answers, right? There's been games where T. Higgins, especially when Jamar Chase got hurt, where T. Higgins looks like a true number 1. Hayden Hurst and even Mitchell Wilcox as tight ends, just kind of having other options, right? Throwing to the running backs out of the backfield. And then today, Mixon as a runner. And even little things like, I keep harping on like the 3rd and 1 package and the 4th and 1 package and just winning in short yardage. Having answers, right? They're lining up for a potential QB sneak. Burrow audibles out of the play. They have a check at the line. It's like, hey, we got 3 dudes in the A gap. Whatever. I'm throwing the toss sweep to Mixon, and we got space. We have guys out in front. The Bengals just had a ton of answers. I don't know if it's as clean as what Tony Romo was saying, where he's coming to the line and it's like Peyton Manning and he's got an answer for everything. I don't know if it's that clean necessarily, but it certainly feels like that, doesn't it? Where the Bengals never. They were just in control offensively. It doesn't mean they got stopped a couple times and everything, but they were in control and had answers to what Buffalo was throwing at them.
Yeah, it did definitely feel like they had the answers to this Buffalo defense, which has generally been one that has caused opposing quarterbacks problems. Like they're able to sort of take away a lot of things that offenses want to do and generally frustrate passing attacks. It was like the Bengals knew what the solutions to that were going to be, and they were able to do whatever they needed to do. There was a sort of brief period in this game in like the second quarter going to halftime where things broke Buffalo's way a little bit. Like they had those couple of plays where they got their touchdown and got it to 14-7, where they were somewhere near the goal line. They executed like a proper rugby rolling maul. Josh Allen hit a brick wall, and then his offensive lineman plowed in behind him.
Yeah.
Got like another 5 yards. And then the next play, I think, right, they just drove him in from the goal line. And all of a sudden you're 14-7. Allen's jawing with Jesse Bates after he scores.
It did get intense.
Like now it's getting a little bit fiery. It felt like we had a game. Then Burrow hits Jamar Chase in the end zone. Well, like 2 minutes before the half, 3rd and goal. Matt Milano kind of pulls the ball out.
That was the throw of the
end.
game, man. That was beautiful.
Perfect, but that's a 4-point play.
Yeah.
That ends up being a field goal. So that's a couple of plays now that are broken Buffalo's favor. And you're thinking, well, we might be able to get something going here. And then the Bengals just came out and went, no, not going to happen.
There's something to the Bengals mentality that I've tried to describe on the podcast, but I think it just keeps showing up, right? I tried to describe on the podcast over the last couple of years where the Bengals had these letdown games. They've had rough games over the last couple of years, and you want to believe, oh, same old Bengals, right? They lost to the Jets. They got the worst game they played this year was against the Browns on Monday Night Football, where they couldn't do anything. This Bengals team that's one game away from the Super Bowl couldn't do anything against a bad Browns defense on Monday Night Football. But then that you forget about it a week later because they bounce back. It's like it never happened. And in this game, every time the Bills had you said they didn't really throw a punch. They jabbed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But every time there was a jab, the Bengals, they punched back, right? And they kept coming back. And I think from a coaching staff standpoint, I think part of that's Burrow. He's always in control, and I just think the Bengals they do a great job from a mental standpoint, handling the onslaught. They handle the snow, they handle adversity, and they have made a lot of actual schematic adjustments and things like that throughout the season. So I think Zach Taylor and the whole crew deserves a ton of credit for what they've done, and that's a far cry from where they were, 3 years ago, where, people are like, how good is Zach Taylor? Is he just going to be a product of Joe Burrow? And I really think they're kind of hand in hand right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Burrow, we know that the elite quarterback is still the driver of all the things, but I think Zach Taylor and the whole staff have done a great job.
Absolutely. I mean, this Cincinnati team, I've been saying it for a while, they're a better team than they were a year ago when they made the Super Bowl. And it's unfortunate that we never got to see the conclusion of that first time they played Buffalo with Damar Hamlin having his heart attack, that we never got to see what that would result in. Because if that went the same way this one did, and all of a sudden Cincinnati's knocked out Buffalo twice in this run, along with Baltimore twice, along with New England on the road, Tampa Bay on the road, Cleveland at home, Kansas City at home, Tennessee, Pittsburgh on the road. Like, this is an insane run that they've been on. And now, I mean, it's pretty Titanic anyway that they're going to be going to Kansas City and, the AFC Championship game between what I think is now looking like clearly the two best teams in the AFC. But it feels like it would be something even more impressive if we had an extra one of those wins in there for Cincinnati. But this resume is crazy that they've been able to put together down the second half of the season.
And to me, it's really like a 2-year resume for Cincinnati too, right? They did go into Kansas City last year in the AFC Championship. They handled Baltimore in their division last year and everything. I mean, it's really impressive how they've turned things around.
3-0 against Kansas City.
They're 3-0 against Kansas City over the last 2 years. And you know how hard it is to beat a team 4 times.
Well, certainly 3 in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that.
Can't beat a team 3 times. Imagine 4 in 2 years.
But also imagine not just it's hard enough to beat any team. Like the narrative is hard to beat any team in your division 3 times straight. Like, imagine they've beaten Kansas City 3 times straight, the team that's now in the AFC title game for 5 straight years.
I'm just saying they've been impressive in big games. And as you mentioned, we don't know what would have happened on the Monday night game, but they looked ready for that game as well. They looked ready and prepared for the moment in prime time with their first game against Buffalo.
I remember they started the year 0-2.
They did.
And it's like, oh, there's the next team that's not making it back anywhere, the playoffs after their Super Bowl run.
That's what I'm saying about giving them adversity, right? They're 0-2. They lose a midseason game against the Browns. They always seem to come out of it, right? And then they look better than ever here down the stretch. Even last week's Ravens game, right? We came out of that game saying, it wasn't as impressive as it should have been, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter going forward. We'll see what happens next week. But